Yeah. You're listening to the Wild Die Podcast. 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 Listen 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 to the Wild Die Podcast.
Welcome to the Wild Eye Podcast, episode 119. My name is Eric Lamover, aka No Sleeves McGee, and here are my co-hosts this morning, Morning Flower Gary McCallum and Carl Big Deal Kiesler. Morning,
Hold
John.
on, Carly.
What's up, guys?
What's happening in Florida there? Anything spectacular?
It's bright and sunny. Beautiful.
Wow, that's it. That's all you got?
Yeah. I played some Monster Hunters Club last night, which was amazing by Candace.
I know. I think I interrupted that game. Morning Flower was asking some questions, and Carl's like, "I'm gaming right now."
Yeah, I'm all into playing my character. I'm like, no.
I've always thought it'd be cool if you could get a phone that, like, when you talk to other people, you had to stare into a thing, and it had a boxing glove on it. So, like, as you're having your conversation, you had to look to keep the conversation going, and then if you got to say something stupid on the other end, you could push a button and it would punch the person in the face. I always thought that'd be cool. Like telemarketers, for example, right? They got to look at this thing because that's how the phones work. And they phone you up in the middle of the dinner. You're like, no, I'm eating dinner. Kabonk. I'm going to invent that.
A little shock or something. A little zapping.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Punching people in
Something
the
along
face
those lines.
is one of your fetish, I think. You always talk about punching people in the face.
Man, I tell you, I went to Tim Hortons yesterday and somebody almost got it. It was so dumb too. You can cut this part out, Eric. I don't care. I was literally in my car trying to pull out of the parking lot, but I couldn't pull all the way out because there was a guy parked behind me because he was in the drive-through lineup. That guy pulls ahead because the drive-through lineup goes, and the next guy pulls right up behind him. I'm 3 feet out of my parking lot. Like, do you know what I mean? I was like 3 feet out of my parking stall but there was the drive-through lineup was there. This guy,
he wanted
literally
his
pulls right up
donuts
behind
and
me.
coffee.
There was 15 people in line ahead of him. That's how big the lineup was and how far away I parked from it and how popular Tim Hortons is in Canada.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I got out, he got an earful and almost a punch in the head. We exchanged some pretty vibrant words in the parking lot. And then I looked in his mirror and saw the handicap sticker.
Oh, man.
Ah,
Oh, jeez.
Harry road raging handicaps. It's so wrong.
Oh, my God.
Well, we got a big show today. Looking at the show notes, Gary prepared very well for this show.
Awesome.
Another Take It to the Edge from our series of Savage Me This, and Gary picked something. Something I would call it unknown. It's not in the big pop culture thing, but he thinks it would make a great Savage setting. Carl got to watch a couple episodes too. I haven't. So right in the Garsler, huh? That's a new segment.
yeah.
Rolls right off the tongue.
Right? It's very fluidic.
Yeah, Travelers it's on Netflix anyway. I don't know if it came out originally for Netflix or it migrated there. They bought it, but not the RPG Traveler. It's Travelers. So
Different show altogether. So
Yeah.
I suggest making some popcorn and sitting back for the new segment called Right in the Garsler, because this is going to be a 3-hour jaunt. This is going to be like we're heading on a boat to Gilligan's Island. No, Eric's already told me that I can't do that.
there's going to be there's gonna be detours in this. He's gonna talk about things unrelated to the show. He's gonna talk about his mother-in-law or things like that. So yeah, get ready.
And we already did the Tim Hortons yesterday. I got some more in there somewhere.
All right, let's do this.
I think it's important to set the premise for people that don't know what Travelers is. We're just going to sort of read it from the wiki. But Travelers takes place in modern times. It's 2020, 2019, 2018, something like that, I think, when the show was filmed. But the premise behind it is that people from the future come back as special operatives, and they're tasked with preventing the collapse of society. So as a player character, you come from a future that's basically been, had the crap kicked out of it. There's an asteroid's hit the planet. There's a bunch of other stuff. The cool part is when you're telling your story, like I wrote in my notes here, man, it's your future. You guys decide what happened. Tidal waves, maybe massive volcanic eruption happened or something. I don't know how you're going to stop that one, but that's the premise of it. Travelers, you play modern day people trying to going on missions to prevent things or stop things from happening in the past that are going to affect the future.
So is this the government? Is it a government agency or?
Nope. This is the beautiful part about it. So in the future, let me set the premise of the future a little bit then. So in the future, society collapses. You've got an asteroid in the show. You've got an asteroid that hits the planet. You've got a plant that sort of goes viral and kills all the other vegetation. There's a few other things that happen and whatnot. And then there's like basically an Arctic winter. Humans build shelters. And so in the show, you come from shelter, I think it's shelter 41, isn't it, Carl?
I think so,
Something like that?
Yeah.
But you don't ever actually really get to see the future in the show, which is pretty kind of cool. There's a couple of glimpses of it in later seasons, but nothing in season 1. And so they hint about like an Arctic future, like, there's glaciers going over top of the dome. But what they do have is they have this supercomputer, this AI that they call the director. And that's kind of a cool little thing that you can play with. And the director is the one. He's like this AI has become sort of like godlike, right? It's doing all these calculations and predicting things and running multiple timelines and blah blah blah. And so it somehow figures out how to send your consciousness from the future back into modern society. It can't send your future back into anything beyond when we had computers and GPS and stuff, because it needs a thing called the tell, which is it needs longitude, latitude, time, and elevation. And you don't get actually transferred back. It just takes your consciousness or your sub and your consciousness, takes your brain and shoots it back digitally, I guess it's into another human's brain. But what they do is they do it seconds before death, so it doesn't affect the timeline. Right. So essentially you're taking over somebody's body. And you train for this in the future because in the show, like somebody will be getting ready to run a red light. And when you come into their body seconds before they run the red light, you got to like stop the car or, defuse the bomb or get yourself out of being wound up in chicken wire in a farming accident kind of a thing. So it's pretty like that. But that's the whole premise of the show. You're basically from the future, but it's just your brain, and you get pushed back into a modern day person's brain. And then you can just go on adventures to try and save the world. And it's a freaking fantastic show.
Yeah, it's really cool. I just started watching it because of the show here. I never even heard of it. Man, it's amazing. It's really cool. There's so much you can play with in a game with just coming into the future. We'll get into it later, but probably. But it's fantastic. It's fantastic.
Well, let's hit those marks, and I'll just quickly go over who's in the show. So an example of characters that you could play would be the team leader. His name's Grant McLaren, and he's FBI. Now, in the show, in the very first episode, you'll see, so I'm not really spoiling anything, his death is he's about to fall down an elevator chasing down a gunman guy. And so he gets saved by the team that is shot ahead of him. So he's got his other team members. Now, the cool part about the show is everything in the future that they're dealing with, because societies collapsed and they're in these shelters is based on social media. So anything that they find in the news or on your Facebook feeds or any of these kind of things are where they gathered the information on what happened to you and where you died and your time of death and stuff. So you've got Marcy Walton. She worked in this library. But here's the cool part about Marcy's character that you learn in the first episode. Marcy is mentally handicapped. But they, in the past, she created a fake Facebook profile that made her look normal, and it shows her doing a bunch of things. She becomes the team's medic. Now, when the team's medic shows up, of course, she's not handicapped, but she gets beat up outside of the library that she works at. She can barely speak. She has a stutter and all this other stuff. And then she gets up off the ground and she starts karate chopping the crap out of everybody, which is awesome. But let's say Carly Shannon is the team's tactician. She assumes the life of a stay-at-home single mom. Trevor Holden, he's like the oldest human. He assumes the life of a high school athlete. Got Philip Pearson, the team's historian, who assumed a college-age heroin addict. So every one of these people that comes back from the future has a problem in some way. They've got some kind of hindrance that they have to deal with. Like Carly Shannon, the tactician, for example, has a baby. And she's got to go on adventures and stuff like that. And she's got an abusive husband that she's trying to deal with. And he's very manipulative. And it's super cool in the show how, because he's a police officer, how he gets to screw with everybody. So for her, it's almost like she took major hindrance. Do you know what I mean, Carl? Because she really gets it.
Yeah, it's like all these people they jump into, they all have these different hindrances that in Savage Worlds you could play up to, either. For me, when I was watching the show, I'm like, either the GM can come up with like, your character has this hindrance that they jump into, or the player and the GM just can make up a character that they're jumping into, and they have whatever hindrance, like addiction, like the historian has. He has this addiction to heroin.
So basically, with every mission, you get a different avatar, basically a different persona that you have to play.
You could play it that way, but essentially what happens is you come back as a cell. This has legs and for so many reasons, but let me tell you something cool that I just thought about too. You remember a couple episodes back, you had mentioned how awesome it would be if you could have somebody else pick your hindrances or something like that. This would be the prime, you show up, you think you're coming back. Philip Pearson apparently had only ever tried heroin once when he died. So when they came back and saved Philip, he's in a room with his buddy and they're both trying heroin. But one of the protocols that you have is you can't take a life or save a life. Like you're not supposed to kill people because you don't want to mess the timeline up. It's very important, right? So he can't save his buddy from dying, although he gets saved, but they were both supposed to die. Turns out it wasn't the first time he ever tried heroin. He was like a full-on junkie. So his whole thing throughout the whole show is he's trying stuff. But I think it'd be cool because I remember a couple episodes ago, you were talking about how it'd be funny if you played at a table and the person beside you got to choose your hindrances. And I think like this would be a cool example of where you could use that exact idea where, you get together and you're like, okay, I'm going to be, you start off in the future, not really knowing everything about the person in the past. And like you said, man, all of a sudden you show up, boom, you're doing your thing. And it turns out the buddy beside you is like, oh, single mother of abused husband. And you're like, what? No, come on. Right.
Yeah. I think to answer Eric's question, from what I've seen, I've only seen 6 episodes and I plan on watching the rest because I just started this week. It's a pretty cool show, but I think they jump into these bodies and they're stuck in there. Like they're in those bodies from then on. I don't know.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So the only one persona for the whole show. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. Right. I think so, right, Gary? Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I was
going to say what's cool is that it's set up perfectly for a game because these travelers come in teams. And like what Gary was saying, there's a leader, there seems to be a medic, a tactician, an engineer, and a historian. So there's like these different roles that the players can have in this setup.
Basically archetypes.
Yeah,
which is really cool. Like the historian, for example, everything he did to train to come back into the past was remembering dates and times. And then he does things like he bets on horses a lot and stuff like that. And that's how the team gets money. So that's kind of a sweet thing because, it's important for the historian to remember dates, times, elevations, where they have to meet people, important things, so that, he's got an edge when he comes back, which is pretty cool.
Because he can't write them down on index cards or cue cards or a computer.
Can't write them down anywhere, because if what happens if he writes them down somewhere and then somebody figures it out? That's kind of how it all starts too. So what they do is they have the dark web, right? Because we have the internet. They run a dark web channel, and every time you see a computer, it looks kind of similar to the Matrix, where you have these little, numbers appearing and stuff. Instead of trickling down the screen like rain, they sort of come at you a little bit and then, go off to the side and fade a bit. But every once in a while, you'll see one of them brighten up, and then it'll like spell a word, and that basically will tell you like a telemetry or something like that. That's how they can communicate with each other. But the engineer and let's get into the tone of this. This is it's kind of like a serious show. It's serious modern. I put sci-fi in here, and I wrote that like the future depends on you. In the future, humans live in shelters, giant domes that were covered by glaciers, indicating a future ice age. They have access to advanced AI, a machine called the Director. And anything that was on the internet or social media throughout the series, the PCs mentioned things like birds chirping, tasting food, human. I kind of read that a little too fast. Tasting food, human abundance. So just being back where they have stuff is a distraction for them, which is pretty neat.
Yeah, there was one episode where they got I think there were a bunch of snipers. It seemed like a whole team of snipers. They just showed up, and they're riding all together to get this destination. They're like, "Look, there's a dog," and they're like, "No, that's a bear." He goes, "No, it's a dog. That I think that's a dog." I mean, they're wowing over just like normal stuff that we would see because it's not in the future.
The guy's like, have you tasted this? And he's eating like cream corn, and the girl's looking at him like, what are you like? You're ridiculous.
Yeah. And
it's funny too, because Trevor is an old guy. He comes back into the body of a high school athlete. So he's constantly dealing with boners.
and he's like, yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, there's one scene where his mom comes into his room first thing in the morning, and he's literally like, at this time he's like 700 years old because he's from the future, right? And so you take that time, but his mom barges into the room and he's full mast, and it's just the weirdest thing. And he's got this hot girlfriend that's trying to hit on him, and he's like an old guy, right? He's in the future, and now he's in this young body. But it's really cool to watch him run and stuff like that, because you can tell that he's thrilled just to be able to move so fast and have this wickedly cool body to play in. And so that sets that's like a dilemma for the players, because you're back in the past. Like, and here's the other thing too that I should mention. It's a one-way trip. You do not get to go back to the future and see what happens. You have to wait for the future to come to you. And it does so in the form of young children, small children. So every once in a while throughout the show, after they complete a mission, or when they're doing a mission, or when they screw up a mission, there'll be some little kid will just appear, and it'll be like, Traveler 1789, abort mission protocol A. And then the kid will pop out of it, right? And they're like, what am I doing here? And then, run off. Where he opens the door, and it's a girl guide. She's like, Traveler so-and-so, you effed up loser. Don't be a dummy. I'm going to, you know what I mean? This is your last chance. And then and then the wife comes to the door, and she's like, sweetie, you already sold girl guide cookies on this side of the street. You must have forgotten. And this little girl guide cookie's looking at him like, what's happening right now? Where am I? Which is pretty neat. So that's how the future can talk to you in the past by apparently children, because their brains are more malleable. You can take over them for a few seconds, but when you shoot, when you shoot your personality or your brain structure back into the person in the past, you literally overwrite their brain and take over them completely. And it's a one-way trip. There's no going back into the future. If you die, that's it. Like, you're done, right?
Yeah.
So.
Sometimes it misfires too, right? Like, they're trying to bring the consciousness into the past, and everybody else shows up, but one person, it just didn't work or something, and they're like, "What are you guys talking about? What, you guys are talking about this future stuff. What's going on?"
Yeah, that was an intense scene too. That family about to go over and then the only one that makes it is the little girl, and she's like, "What are you guys talking about?" Like, suddenly they're all like futurism. But Anyways, back to let's hit setting rules. So in the show, one of the things they have is there's other factions, because there's other shelters, right? They talk about a shelter that gets taken out, I believe, in a tidal wave or something like that, or by the meteor impact. I can't remember.
Yeah.
But these other shelters also have access to future AI. Some of them, however, have different ideas. They're like, why are we listening to this computer? We should be listening, this is our world, not their world. We created them. Why are we listening to them? So one of the setting rules I thought would be perfect for this is fanatics, because the other factions are, again, their goal is the same, to stop future calamities and make the earth nice in the future instead of apocalyptic. But they're very, very single-minded about how they go about it. Like, they're very fanatical. Like, we're not listening to the director. So, it might be your intent to go get this device that's going to help you build this laser to shoot the meteor out of the thing. But we want that laser too, but we're going to use it for different reasons, kind of a thing. So there's that element.
So I don't understand how that comes into play, because fanatics is when the bad guy gets shot, there's one of his minions that jumps in the way to take the hit.
So I wrote down, you learn of another group of travelers that has come back, also trying to change the past. However, they have different ideas. Oh, here's so I see that's how you look at fanatics, but I would use the same thing. And without them, I guess, they're, maybe it's not fanatics, but the way I look at it is they're willing to die for their cause, even if it's not yours. And you're both working for the same sort of end goal. But you know what I mean? Like, they're literally willing to like blow themselves up, and they don't have a problem with it. They're fanatical in that way. So maybe that falls under something else. Setting rules, I put more skill points, because you come from the future. You have an advantage. So we're gonna, I thought that would be suiting. Multiple languages. You actually see McLaren use this when he speaks to this little abducted kid in episode 3. There's a few times when they speak, multiple languages. And then I'm not 100% sure about Born a Hero, but I threw that in there as a possibility, because you kind of are like, and I'm looking at Born a Hero from the perspective of when you shoot back into your body. That is when you're actually like, you kick into hero mode. Otherwise, you're just like a post-apocalyptic bum that's living with a computer in the future.
I could definitely see Born a Hero.
Would you say the characters are well trained in the sense that maybe they should start seasoned or a veteran, or?
Pretty much, especially in their field, right? Because literally they spend their entire lives in the future too. This isn't a thing that just came up. They talk about how they've been doing this for a long time. They talk about the early attempts to transport brain material, and how people would get transported out of their bodies and back in, like when they first started, which I guess is a thing that you can sort of do. Getting your consciousness pulled out of your brain, put somewhere, and then shot back into your own body is not a problem. But when you try and shoot it back into the past, so there was a bunch of work up to it, right? And also another cool thing too was the travelers that come back have numbers. So these guys are travelers like 3,000. There's actually thousands of travelers and other cells that have already come back. And you're not allowed to talk to them, so you don't know who they are. The AI, like the director, forbids you from talking to other groups, which is kind of cool. But you can be aware of them, because there'll be times when they'll just interject. Another group will show up, maybe to help you or something like that, get you out of a jam, or you get the other factions showing up. Plus, you've got to deal with FBI, police. So you've got a lot of NPCs that can sort of roll in, and then you're dealing with your family as well. There's a lot of problems that you sort of have to work out to save the future, which is pretty neat.
So right now, I'm going to bring up something that Carl mentioned in pre-show before. Reminds him of the old Savage World setting called TPA, Temporal Probability Agency. Yeah. And basically in there you play an agent, and it's an AI, just like in Travelers. I don't remember what her name is. Maybe Alice or something like that, or Linda, whatever. But and she sends people out on missions, but they don't seem important. Like, the mission might be dump a bunch of ketchup in that guy's fries because it will set up a chain of event that will change the future. And they get their mission from paperwork that they find. Like, I think the first mission takes place on the plane, and your mission is in, that little paper that you read that tells you what to do in case of an emergency. While your mission briefing is in there, and you have to find a way to break into the cockpit because the guy's going to crash the plane. So you have to take care of the plane. So is it missions like that in Travelers, basically?
It's exactly what it's like. You could do something as dumb as go meet a guy. Yeah. With your team engineer, your mission could be build this device, which you send your engineer. You just can send everybody off to go get parts, right? Basically sort of judge how well they do. Bring the parts back. He assembles it, and you take it somewhere and give it to somebody. It's just a mission handoff. Go meet this group leader. Make sure that they get set up. It actually happens in one of the episodes. There's a family that's going to they're all going to die. The father's being a lunatic, and he's driving the car over the top level of one of those car parks. And they're all up there waiting for this guy. And, seconds before the thing's about to go over the ledge, the brakes get slammed on. Everybody gets out, and they're all like, hey, traveler, so-and-so. They're completely different people, right? And he hands them a bag of cash money. He's like, here's the money that you need to go take care of your mission. And that was your entire mission. But the little girl is, like me, Carl will talk about, she's the only one that there was a misfire. So she's in the back. She's like, what's going on, everybody? And they're like, shut up, Susan. And she's like, Mom. Like, there's these whole scenes and even Carly Shannon, the team's tactician, she shows up, and she's a single mom, but she's not attached to this child at all. So it's really, a lot of her problems are trying to deal with this baby and stuff. It's not until later on she gets attached, but it's pretty slick. So, and there is an episode on a plane. I don't know if Carl's seen it or not, but he's got to do a thing with somebody on a plane. It's sort of the same kind of an idea. So powers. I put down weird science. I don't know if this really fits or how I would work this, but your team's tactician has some pretty advanced machinery or knowledge of the future, and they have nanobots that they help heal people with. He creates these communications devices that go in your neck. So they're always poking behind their neck, and they're like, hey, team so and so, but they're just little implants that they put in. And the weird thing is I don't know if you've noticed this, Carl, too, but it's kind of cool because every time they use these things, he always walks to a window, or he always walks out in the open, like he's like.
It's like he's trying to get a signal or something. I don't know. But
because it has quite a range. And I think that people realize, like, okay, you got this tiny little implant. We all know it's not going to have power. So they're always making an attempt to sort of, but it's almost like they're trying to get away from people too. Like, they don't want to hear you talking, but they do have like extra long range. And then he says to the kid, he's like, when did you have time to do this? He's like, oh, after school.
Definitely weird science would be great for this, but not like crazy gizmos, but something like one step into the future, like they have these shots that they made up that they're injecting people with stuff to knock them out like in an instant. I mean, it's just like, futuristic little things, little gadgets and gizmos like that.
Yeah, it would have to be, pretty realistic. Yeah. And plus they build the laser that they've never seen before, right? That worked on antimatter. Mm-hmm. Antimatter is a thing in here. Like it's touched on in season 1 because they use it to sort of fuel the laser and stuff like that. But I mean, it's pretty much unlimited as far as how the games or missions or any of that, because it can be anything mundane. What you do find out in episode 3, Carl's already seen it, when they go to rescue that little kid, that was never a mission. Because you're coming back from a post-apocalyptic future and everything here is beautiful and wonderful, there's always this dilemma that you're dealing with. Like, I could just walk away right now. I could go live in the country away from technology, spend the rest of my days, driving an old pickup truck to town. And as long as you never touch anything or deal, like, get your name in the paper or any of that kind of stuff, you would be safe. And you have to be near technology, like a city or something like that, to have your brain, because they use Wi-Fi or electricity or some shit like that, right? So you could You could literally live in the country and live out your life in abundance and in a beautiful time, which is so, but these people, these travelers have families and stuff like that. So you're playing a split personality. And then again, you're trained as well, right? To follow the directives and stuff. There's specific rules that you have to follow.
Yeah. There's some cool dilemmas that could also come into play that I saw that I think it was the historian. He knows when people might die or are going to die. And he tries to, like, if there's like a little boy that he knows that has been kidnapped and might die somewhere, he's like, well, we have a chance to save him, but they're not supposed to. They're not supposed to mess with the timeline in that way. But he has this dilemma. It's like, well, I could save this kid or not. Does it really matter? It's a really cool dilemma that poses in the show.
Yeah, it's a fantastic show. NPCs, people you would go up against. You got almost every government agency. Because they're using the internet and they have technology and all these weird things are happening, people start to piece it together. In fact, Agent McLaren was on the trail of these guys, and that's how his story comes into play. He's the team leader, right? So as he's chasing them all into this building, they're all going to the building just to meet McLaren because that's their mission. Each person's, And so when they get up to the top floor of this building, he's chasing what he thinks is some kind of new terror cell. But it turns out he's actually chasing his own team. He doesn't realize it. And then when he goes up there, they all meet there because there's a guy that gets a gun and goes on a rampage and guns people down. And that's how they know McLaren was killed. He fell down the elevator shaft tracking this guy. That was the story. And so everybody meets there, and that's how they save McLaren. But he was on the trail of them. So like people are aware. So you've got government agencies, you got the local police that you have to deal with anytime you commit a crime. So you have to be very low key. You've got your boss at work that you have to deal with. Like, how do you scooch out of work if you got to go do a mission in the middle of the day? The one kid who's actually 700 years old, what is his name? Trevor?
I think so.
Trevor,
yeah.
Right? He's in a 17-year-old body. He's got parents and he's in school and stuff, right?
Yeah.
But he's got to ditch school and he's got to do all this stuff. They have like a little hideout that they make and whatnot. So you're dealing with all of those kind of peoples and whatnot, and you're trying to keep everything low profile because you don't want to blow your cover. You blow your cover, I don't even know what happens because it hasn't really come up in the show. But you've got all of those things constantly messing with you. So let's wrap this up with how I would run a typical game. My thoughts on what I would do, and I think we probably should have started here. We could have been done 15 minutes ago. Eric's fallen asleep. No? Here's my thoughts on how I would run a game. First off, I'm going to create a mission. Meet an incoming traveler, transfer an item that you've been building to another team, steal some intel, something like that. Secondly, I'm putting each of my team member in a predicament where they need to get out of their current situation. Basically anything like, and this is what I really thought was pretty interesting about this is this is going to be a lot of the player. You tell me what your problem is right now, and let's see how we deal with it, right? This might actually be a little maybe quick encounter right out of the gate, but I'm going to put each of my team members in a predicament that they need to get out of their current situation. Dinner with the family, sexy time with the girlfriend. There's one scene where Trevor and Gary is his dad's name are they're going to sit down and they're trying to reconcile their relationship because it's not the greatest, right? And so they're like, let's sit down and watch some golf, a little sports show and hang out. So he's making popcorn and stuff, and all of a sudden, boop, incoming mission. And he just he's like looking at his dad on the couch, and his dad's watching golf, and he just grabs his jacket and walks out the door. Like, just makes it worse, right? Kind of a thing. Bad role plays or roles are going to result in some kind of repercussion later on down the road, like random phone calls. Maybe when Trevor gets grounded, because there is parts where he gets grounded, right? You get random phone calls mid mission that's going to screw if you don't make your girlfriend believe that you're going to do a thing. Your baby gets sick, your kids need to be picked up ASAP. Something happens, right? Like, so depending on how well you do in your initial thing, I might bring that back later on, or maybe you do really well and it's not an issue at all. Your mission, you're sort of, you go off flawlessly. Once everybody meets at the predetermined location, the team leader or the dark web is going to spit out a mission. Everybody gets a job, because this game is sort of really protects the niche of each character, the historian, the engineer, the medic and stuff like that. Each of them is going to have a very specific role to play. But it could be anything as mundane as, go hijack a vehicle, which they kind of would all know how to do, right? Make some magnetic company logos, get some uniforms. Everybody goes and figures out the mission and then goes and brings some parts back, and we role play that a little bit. And then lastly, it's going to be mission time. You head off to go meet this person. On your way to, go meet traveler so-and-so. The fanatics show up, and all of a sudden you're in the gunfight in the top of a carport trying just to meet somebody, but maybe they want to meet this person and they're going to jack this person and take them for their own knowledge or information, kind of a thing. And that would sort of be the main thing. You go to show up and just deliver a part to this person, but all of a sudden you're being attacked by these crazy friggin' fanatics from another shelter that are trying to alter the timeline. And and I'm thinking that's how the typical game goes up. We'll roll some combat. Maybe the FBI or police show up in a few minutes. Everybody's got a skedaddle kind of a thing. And you got to make it back to the hideout before the thing's over and wrap your mission up. And then, player facing again, what happened? Did we succeed? Did we change the future? Maybe a little kid shows up. There, I think there's one scene where the kid's throwing the basketball up against the hideout and he opens the door, and then the little kid stops and he turns over to him and he's like, so-and-so, he gives him the message and stuff. But I'm thinking that's how I would run a typical game. And then,
it's fantastic. To me, the greatest part of a game like this is the double life that the players have to juggle not only their future self, but their current situation that they're in, the current body that they're in. They have to juggle that life between what they're doing, because they just can't outright say, hey guys, hey family, I'm from the future and I'm going to leave and just go, work with these people. They'd, Baker Act you is what they'd call in Florida. They put you in, they take in, they put you in a mental asylum or something like that. You just can't outright say, hey, I'm doing this, but you have to juggle these things. That's the cool thing about this, about a game like this, is all the role-playing opportunities that the players would have with their family or their jobs or whatever, and then go off and do these missions and stuff. Pretty cool.
Yeah.
Pretty cool.
And I like this is one of the few shows that I've seen where time travel, there's nothing about time travel in this that really makes you look at these weird dichotomies like, well, that would never happen because if that happened, then so-and-so wouldn't be born and blah, blah, blah. Yeah. At the end of one of their missions.
No plot holes.
There probably is, and maybe I'm just getting rope-a-doped by how good the show is, but I don't. This is one of the few things, like when I was watching Thanos and the finger snap, there were so many things where I'm like, oh, this is hot garbage, that this wouldn't happen because of this, this, and this. But in this show, because it's just a one-shot back into the past and you just assume the life of somebody else, I haven't found anything where there's these weird, like you say, plot holes, and you're just like, this would never happen. This is hot garbage. And those things really set me off. Like I'm triggered by those. Have you seen
Lost in Space?
No, like Lost in Space. What's the Stephen King one? The Stand. Have you seen The Stand?
Yeah, it's good.
There's the one kid that somehow gets the camera in the house across town after the world has gone to shit. There's no Wi-Fi. There's no internet. I know how far a Wi-Fi signal goes, and it's not going to my neighbor's house across the street. I can tell you that much, let alone across town where this kid's going to pick up a camera feed and watch the other couple have nookie time or have a computer thing set up in his basement. It's just not a thing that's happening. There's no way. And devices that small don't have ranges like that. And he sets a teddy bear up in their room and spies on them. And it triggers me. It literally triggers me. I'm like, this is hot garbage, because it's just a way for them to give that character knowledge of a situation or explain how he knows what's going on. But there's no way that would ever work. And I haven't seen anything like that in this show. And this show, Carl, I'm just going to say, gets way better. There's some cool stuff that happens later on that you're just going to be like, oh man, did not see that coming.
Yeah, as far as plot holes, I didn't really see anything. And it seems like when they do a mission and it's accomplished, correctly, however the AI said to do it, it might be a part of a bigger picture. So they might have like one little fragment of something that maybe other teams have to accomplish. So maybe when everything is, completed, then it changes the future. You can play along with that.
So as a GM, you may not even have to, come up with the whole story arc. You just start with one thing, and then you do another thing, and then you start thinking, oh, maybe it's because they're trying to do this. The AI is trying to do this at some point, and then everybody gets that awe moment, or maybe the players come up with their own explanation. Maybe it's because we're trying to do this, and then Jim's, oh, okay, yeah, let's do that then.
Well, there's a season, the first season, I'm like halfway through, and there's a point where someone actually mentions saying, well, if we do this correctly, we might not even be here to know that we did it correctly, because the future might have changed. So that's an interesting thing, because she said we might not be able to be, we might be gone, but we might steer. We don't know. So you could have changed it, but you're still here. It's kind of iffy.
There's what they call the travelers.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, there's a thing they have called the Traveler's Oath. We, the last unbroken remnants, vow to undo the errors of our ascendants, to make the earth whole to the lost, or the lost unlost, and then it says at the peril of our own birth. And they recite that right before they shoot this laser thing off or set it up, right? Because they're all standing there, and it's like them having a moment. Okay, this could be it for us. Mm-hmm. If this works, and this is one of the things, we might never have been born, and we could instantly be, not here, kind of a thing. And it's really a sort of a neat deal. Here's another cool thing, that you could end your episode and just walk away, literally just walk away, because they wouldn't know what happened. But the next episode starts, they got to go meet a traveler. Well, this traveler is coming back from the future. And when they talk to them, they're like, hey, what's going on in the future, kind of a thing, right? And they're like, it didn't change anything. So they don't actually know what they did or the effects of what they did until the very next time you sit down at the session. And then it's very player facing, because you could literally just say, what happens to your players, and let them just tell you, okay, it didn't work. And then they can start running their noodle and be like, oh, it must not have worked for this reason or this reason. The mini campaign or plot point campaign for season 1 in the first 6 episodes, because it's a 12 episode season, is I can't remember the name of the meteor that they have to. I want to call it Albatross 645, right, or something like that. But that's their mission. But in order to succeed at that mission, they got to do a bunch of other missions. You got to go get uniforms. You got to build these parts. You got to meet. You got to go set off all these races, get cash, build your hideout, do all of this other stuff. And then get the antimatter, which is a thing that they do so that they can fire this laser off, right? They got to break into this military place. And all of that just leads up to sort of the final mission, which is put the antimatter in the laser and shoot it. And there's your plot point campaign. You got 5-6 adventures right there with them trying to do stuff. And then in the meantime, you throw in these little sidetracks. Go save this abducted child that Philip does. And it's not even sanctioned by the director. And, he starts pulling the gun on people, and the director's taking over the kids. He's like, stop this. You guys are off your objective, blah, 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 kind of thing, right? So, yeah, it's really cool. It's really, really set up to be savaged.
Yeah, as a GM, I would be pushing that on certain players. I'd be like, well, that the kid that you just saw, he's going to be abducted and killed in about an hour. Are you going to do anything about it?
Yep.
You could throw those little hooks in there, try
here's
to
the Benny.
Yep.
Guess what happens? That little kid comes back and later on and screws your plans.
I mean, it's a fantastic setup for a game. I mean, it's very gameable.
And from what you guys are talking about, I don't see it needing much added. Maybe a little bit of the technology that you mentioned, but the rest is all story driven, and you already have a bunch of equipment and the core rules and a bunch of edges and especially hindrances that would work for that. So it's maybe some type of background package, because you guys mentioned certain roles within the team. So like one person would start with D6 healing, and one person would start with D6 repair, D6 tactics and things like that. But maybe common bond for the team leader as an edge, something like that, and a package that you give everybody. And then
you could definitely do that with the different roles that are in this game. Like you're the historian, you're the team leader, you get whatever bonus this is. That's a cool idea.
Yeah, and like I said too, this is one of the cool things that I think I at least I found really appealing is, as a game master, I'm not the one that's saying stuff. Like if the weird science guy wants to invent something and it seems reasonable, we can just agree on it. Like, okay, in the future we have nanobots because you know what I mean? It's in the current time you're in, when you come back, the engineer could always maybe figure a way out. So maybe you could spend a penny to influence the story because you remembered something from the future. Oh yeah, this happened back in the past, which is also a thing that happens because Philip is sitting there and he's like, Flight 386. What day is it? Oh my God, McLaren just got on a plane that's going to crash. But meanwhile, that's McLaren's mission. And he's the only one that knows he's got to get on this plane to save a guy. And on the rest of the team has no idea. So there's cool things like that. Maybe if, you know, and that would be for, if I was to savage that, Philip spent a penny for a hint, like what's going on? You know, why can't we get a hold of McLaren? I want to influence the story. And I'm like, okay, historian guy. He remembers that McLaren's going on this flight kind of a thing. So yeah, it's pretty neat. But
you keep mentioning influence the story, and in a time travel show, that there's no better explanation to your influence the story. Really, you could say that in a previous mission you did this little thing there, and now the present is different. You changed it a little bit, so you influence the timeline. Basically, you could call it influence the timeline instead of influence the story. Maybe edges to have more bennies to spend on those, or maybe you can increase the amount of things that you can change with your bennies instead of just something minor like an item that you need. It could be something more major, more important.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. I find it interesting. Like, you know, like the whole communications thing, for example, let's just break that down for 1 second. In our timeline, we don't have devices that can do this. In their timeline, they do. So if the weird scientist basically came to me and said, hey, this is future tech, blah, 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 I'm going to build these devices. They have, you know, super long range. They're activated this way. This is how they fit in your head kind of a thing. We don't use cell phones, blah, blah, blah. I'd be like, okay, that's kind of cool. Right? Let's, you know, the player, there's a lot of stuff because you guys come from the future, and the future's not talked about. Like there's very little discussion about what life is like in the future, other than they don't have stuff. They eat gruel. Like there's one scene when he's looking at, I don't know if he's looking at a hot dog and he's like, I thought I'd never have to eat this stuff again. And then he fades out. Well, let me rephrase that. He's looking at gruel and then he blinks back to his timeline and it's a hot dog. He's like, I never thought I'd have to eat this stuff again. So you know that the AI has sort of helped them out in such a way that it's bleak. They don't have a lot of stuff, but they do have this supercomputer, and it's like super intelligent, and they figured out a lot of stuff, but they live in this place that's just a pile of junk. Right. Yeah. And so now that they're back, and that's all you really know about the future, which is kind of cool because that gives your players the ability to basically, I'm going to make a levitating skateboard. You know, maybe they have 3D image casting and stuff like that and now you can cast the illusion spell kind of a thing. So yeah, it's pretty slick, but everything is got to be like a one shot, and you can't leave it behind. Like you cannot leave this technology behind, like in the Terminator, when they find the hand and the microchip, that sets off a series of events. So you can't kill people. So there isn't just guns a-blazing. Like you really have to set things up and hope that the role-playing part of it, not the combat part of it, comes to the front. And if it doesn't, then you can start killing people as a last result. Yeah. It's not.
Well, that's where the protocols come into play. There's different protocols for the teams that they can and can't do certain things, or they're not supposed to. I mean, it's not saying they can't, because there is an episode where they have to meet another team, and they're kind of crazy. They're kind of rogue, and they're doing crazy stuff, man. They're taking these ideas to the extreme, and it's interesting on how the different teams, like your team of players, can have one mindset, but they meet up with another team and they're like, hey man, we're here to save the world. So it doesn't matter who we kill. You know, it doesn't matter what we do.
Yeah.
But your team might be the more heroic one, where it's like, well, we got to go along these protocols, dude. You know? So it's not all the same thing, you know?
It's kind of funny too, because there's a lot of times when they meet other teams, they're like, "Oh, you guys just showed up." Like, we've been here for a couple years, bud. Simmer down. So it's very well put together. And you want to do your research, just go watch the show Travelers. You're going to enjoy it, right? And then you'll have all the information you need to know how to sit down and run a Travelers episode with people from the future and stuff. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, makes me want to re-up my subscription to Netflix and start watching it. I almost pulled the trigger a couple times on that show when I still had Netflix, and now.
Yeah, it's the kind of show you sit down, you watch, and you're just like, this is how I would do that. Oh, here's this roll, here's that roll. Oh, he just made his agility check. Oh, he did that with a raise. The busload of old people, though, is the best. They show up and they're like the sniper assault team, and it's all these old people from a death cult, right? And they're about to drink the Kool-Aid, and every one of them's like, ah! And then they all get on the bus, and the whole bus trip is basically the old people have to stop to go take a leak, but they're trying to get to an event on time, and it's awesome. And then they show up and they all got AK-47s, and they all take up sniper positions, and they're all like, oh.
Like, who's your best sniper?
Awesome.
Oh, it's Helen over there. It's some old lady with a gun.
Yeah, she's like, "Hey, how's it going?" And she's up on the roof. Fantastic. She's up on the roof beside the team tactician, and she's like sniping people. But remember what I said: they can't kill people. You cannot take a life or do any of that stuff. So the funny part is she's not actually sniping people. They're shooting around them. And Gleason figures it out. He's like, "Hey, they're not shooting to kill." And that's when you see all the old people just start getting gunned down, because Gleason just walks out. He's like, "They're not trying to kill us." Pow, 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 pow. All these old people are like, "Ah!" You know what I mean? It's fantastic. Yeah, it's really neat. Spoiler alert.
Let's wrap this up. Well, thank you, Gary. I mean, yeah, like I said, it makes me want to watch the show, and I think it would solve a lot of issues that some people have with time travel in RPGs. I mean, a few years back, we had this Time Zero review, and Harrison and I talked about how, it's really difficult to get it right, time travel in an RPG. And this is one case where there's no traveling back and forth and trying to come back to kill Hitler. It's not about that. It's more about little things that you change and, following the code of conduct. There's limitation to time travel. So I like that. Yeah. Can you speak just a little bit about Deadwood, Carl? Because I know you're going. It's this Savage Expedition this year. Maybe some people want to join on that if there's still room.
Yeah, you can buy. I guess they sell. They're selling badges on the PEG site for it, so you buy your badge there. But it's pretty much up to you on how to get there and everything like that. There's no. There's no travel guide or anything guiding you there, but there's nothing like that, because it's a little difficult on getting to Deadwood. But what it is they're celebrating the anniversary of Deadlands, and what better place to do it is in an old west town like Deadwood. And we're going to play some Deadlands there. We're going to go. My buddy and I, Steve, is going to go, and we're going to probably go on our own, maybe with other gamers, and just go see like the Crazy Horse Memorial, Mount Rushmore, Devil's Tower. It's all within like almost an hour's drive of Deadwood. So we're flying in to Rapid City, South Dakota, and we're renting a car and then driving into Deadwood. Other people from Colorado, it's only about a 2-hour drive from Colorado. So they're just carpooling and just going up to Deadwood. So yeah, it's in August. You can check out the PEG site, but I'm planning some Deadlands games. So already. Nice. So I'm going to run some Deadlands games in Deadwood. So
yeah, I'll put the link up there. Sounds cool. Another expedition that was recently announced, we've talked about it on the show too, next year on January 3rd, the Savage Cruise 2022, and it's filling up. They're talking about a cap on a number of people.
That's amazing.
So, I put my deposit in, not 100% sure if I can go, but I want to reserve a spot, and there's going to be a deadline later this year where you can get a full refund if you can't go. But Carl and I are going. Carl is confirmed. Me, I'm trying, and Gary's in Canada.
Hell no! I don't want no COVID. So I don't even know if the border will be open. See what happens there. I do want to touch on the Savage Cruise 2022 that's coming up. Is if you're interested in going to that, go check out Peg's site on Twitch. I think is it Pinnacle Entertainment on Twitch?
Yeah,
I'm sure you can find it. They did an episode a little while back that I was telling Eric about, and he went and watched it. It's super informative, man. There's so much stuff in there. Like, I literally feel like I could go book right now, and I totally know what I'm getting myself into. A whole hour's worth of. I think they even talked to the lady that sets up the cruise and stuff like that. It's super informative.
Yeah,
she's really cool. She's trying
Check
to
that out
match
on
me up
Twitch.
with someone because I need a roommate. So if you're going there but you don't have a roommate, maybe we can bunk up.
Right. And if you find out that Eric is your roommate, bring extra mayonnaise. Just saying.
Yeah, I'll even put your sunscreen lotion on and
Oh, yeah.
get you ready for excursions.
Those
We're gonna have a
hard,
good time.
hard to reach spaces.
Yeah. That's right.
To put sunscreen where you won't need sunscreen to go.
Where the sun don't
I don't
shine.
get tan there. It's okay. Shh. Hush now, little buddy. All right, creepy. Moving on.
And I want to thank our newest patron, Philippe Champigny. So, merci beaucoup, Philippe.
Mercy buckets.
Merci buckets.
That's how we say it in BC.
And that's it. Hope you enjoyed that series. Maybe we'll do that again later if you enjoyed it. Like I said, if there's certain IPs or shows or movies that you think would be cool, Savage, send us your suggestion. If there's enough people interested in it, and we might pull our Hydra heads together and come up with something that'd be fun. So this is Eric saying, get yourself a big deal.
This Carl saying, do you want to Benny that?
This is Gary saying, I had a big deal. Too much sauce. Just saying. Keep your pants on. Keep it fun. Thanks, everybody. We're out.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Wild Eye Podcast. If you would like to get in touch with us, our email address is thewildeye@gmail.com. You can also find us on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. We're the Wild Eye Podcast. We're also on Patreon. If you would like to support us, send us your donation at patreon.com/The Wild Eye. Speaking of Patreon, here's a list of our patrons. Rob Towell, Uncle J. Raz, Conrad Erasmus Neubert, Corey Judd, Kevin Stanley, Harry Chalmers, Ray Arastia, Dan Brown, Jan Jetmar, Manuel Sams, Mr. Stagg, Zovia RPG Maps, Chris Grant, Robert Dorgan, Andy Hall, Brian Kaser, Darrow Cartier, Jens Conheim, Sid the Squid, Dr. Dave Anderson, Tor Bjertnes Peterson, Trevor Hurst, and Philip Champigny. Thank you, and we'll see you later.